It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, so the National Party has begun the process of replacing struggling Prime Minister Christopher Luxon. It's astonishing, isn't it? The whispering campaign in Wellington about his weak and indecisive and increasingly struggling and unpopular leadership has gone to a new level, with national MPs now talking about not if he must be replaced, but when and who takes the job. His polling and his personal popularity is far too low and going backwards for this stage in the electoral cycle. It's simply not good enough. MPs concede privately that they can't enter the next election with him at the helm. If they do, they face being a one-term government. And they risk handing power over to an increasingly activist left-wing coalition, including the unpredictable Māori Party, who have failed to read the mood of 90% of New Zealand, who find their anti-Pākehā approach reprehensible and entirely inappropriate for government, you see. And Labour's leader Chris Hipkins has been far too slow to condemn the approach, which only says that he's got no problem with such divisive language in politics. Put them in and watch the country completely empty out to Australia. You'll see some immigration there and they'll be gone. National needs to hit at least about 40% in the polls next time to be sure of being in government. That's what they need to get to. Luxon doesn't stand a chance. He doesn't even look like he's getting close. He's going backwards. It's understood that John Key, Stephen Joyce, he's a former Prime Minister, and the former ministers, Murray McCulley, have been discussing how a transfer of power to a new leader might occur, and it involves potentially bringing in former Minister Paula Bennett as the president, or the new president of the party, to oversee the potentially messy switch and break the news to Luxon that he's lost the faith and the trust of his MPs and his caucus. It's a big deal to unseat a sitting Prime Minister. The last one was, and I was there, I saw this, Jim Bolger was rolled by Jenny Shipley. The coup run by Tony Ryle and Bob Simcock. They held secret meetings for weeks, getting MPs on side. The code name for the People's Diaries was called the Te Puke Bypass. And Bolger was rolled in his return from an international conference in Britain. The news was broken to him on the tarmac by Doug Graham, one of his ministers. And Jenny Shipley took over the reins of the country, effectively. She was the new Prime Minister. National doesn't like coups. No parties do, but sometimes they simply have to be done. They have to happen for the good of the party and the wider public interest of the nation. National, at this stage, has no idea who would replace Luxon. That's what's being worked on at the moment. So what triggered all this? Certainly the Mike Hosking interview, which went pear-shaped, hasn't helped. But one bad day surely doesn't lead to a Prime Minister being dumped, and it doesn't. That's right. But Luxon has failed to connect with voters, and that's obvious, isn't it? He stands for nothing. Voters see that. There appears no coherent economic plan. We remain in recession. We all feel that. The health system, as you'll find out shortly, is teetering, and we're experiencing that. And he is as indecisive and unsure as he has ever been. That's on show most days. We see it. But on top of Hosking's train wreck, another issue has come to light. Mainstream media will miss this because they block certain conservative voices like Christian leader Bob McCroskey, who effectively was deplatformed by the media some years ago. So he set up his own way to connect, and he has a decent-sized audience, decent-sized following. He's used an email to Luxon from an early childhood teacher to expose just how much like Jacinda Ardern Luxon really is, and why he's no strong conservative leader willing to put the radicals and the social activists in their place. Look at this. So a worried preschool teacher contacted Luxon's office asking this. She writes, "What is going on in the education system? It's not okay. Why are you allowing this wokeness and confusion into schools? I've been a childcare reliever for the last 5 years, and I've had several kids below the ages of 5, even as young as 3.5, approach me in centres saying they're not male or female and that they are identifying as they, them, he, she. These are vulnerable young children who know no better and are only saying it because of what they've seen and heard from TV or older people around them. What is your plan to change this, Prime Minister? I, for one, know that whatever they say, I will fight against it as a caring woman of God." So that's how the letter ends to the Prime Minister. His answer will not satisfy established conservative voters on the right at all, or the thousands of parents in the middle. Indeed, it shows how he's miles away from their expectations and their beliefs, I think. He writes back, or someone in this office writes back, a staff member replies like this. "Kia ora. Thank you for your email to the Prime Minister, Right Honourable Christopher Luxon. Christopher is a proud supporter of the LGBTQI+ community and wants New Zealand to be a country that celebrates and supports diversity, including our rainbow community. Nā mihi nui." And that's from the PM's office. No. Just no. The letter writer had specific concerns about 3, 4 and 5-year-olds becoming trans preschoolers, identifying as trans preschoolers. Luxon and his staff needed to write back that he too stands against this and that no one on his watch is going to talk or act in such a way that makes this in any way viable and acceptable. But in saying that, Chris says Prime Minister supports the rainbow community, the wider LGBT+ community, whatever, to live their lives without discrimination based under New Zealand law. So that's what he could have said. But he fails to spot it. They failed to spot it, and his staff failed to see the mistake they've just made. The rest is history. When his office had all the time in the world to respond to a tricky question from a Conservative voter, he was unequivocal in his response. He was firm that he supported, that he celebrated the LGBT plus community. But when he was lobbed a sitter by Mike Hosking, he dithered, he paused and made a meal of it. It's strange, isn't it? National voters wanted more from Luxon, and in the end they got way, way less. He promised to rid the country of the Jacinda years, but he's kept much of what she introduced in office. Luxon doesn't have the command or the respect needed to hold the PM's office. And it's over, I think it's over, bar the counting and the screaming and the deal-making over this changeover. As a political journalist for 20 years at Parliament, I saw coups develop early. I saw the lies, the tricks, the denials and the language used. I saw politicians into the death spiral. It was just time, and the execution was swift soon after that, just a matter of time. This is no different. Question him, they'll undermine him. The next polls will be crucial. Watch those next polls. They're really crucial. He's been a first-year flop as Prime Minister. When you stand for nothing, you'll find it hard to answer anything in your own words or do anything at all. That's original, to be honest. Lifetime National supporters have stood around their barbecues all summer asking, when is he going to actually do anything? The answer is, he isn't. The next major announcement from Luxon will be his resignation as Prime Minister. Luxon is an empty vessel. National's policy agenda has been lacklustre, and it was a nod to the failed and boringly predictable past, really. Tax cuts for those who earn plenty. Hasn't helped the economy. Welfare sanctions to those that are downtrodden. Landlords got tax breaks. They forgot to fund the cancer drugs until it was pointed out to them. And Luxon, despite his wealth, stupidly moaned about the massive free house he was given. So he stayed in his own mortgage-free apartment only to claim the $50,000 a year allowance on top of his $500K salary. Those things resonate with people. None of this has helped us get out of recession, and the recession we remain in. Even with interest rates low, the flow-through effect is agonisingly slow on this economy. He promised to be better than Jacinda, but in the end he's proved himself incapable of doing anything at all, to be honest. It's now just a matter of time, and once they know who replaces him, I think the changeover will be relatively swift. Luxon is now on borrowed time, and the clock, folks, well, the clock is ticking.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.